All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know what the expectation is. You already know what we're all about here. Whatever the challenge is, whatever the obstacle is, whatever it is you may be going through, we are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. And trust me when I tell you, you are not going through it alone, man. Today, I got to tell you, it's going to be real as all the interviews on. Every time I do turn on this camera, it's going to be very rewarding just being able to speak and things like that. But whenever I speak to someone that is also in fitness, having been through, Devin, check this, six different gyms. I'm not casting any aspersions on you or anything like that, but I've worked with six different gyms that have all gone out of business. And when you hear this guy's story, there's so much passion in terms of how he wants to help clients. And I am 1000% sure he's not going to be on that list, or he's not going to be on the list of a business, a gym that goes up and goes down. So, all that being said, Devan Gonzalez, founder of Strive 11, correct?
Yep,
Strive 11 Fitness, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, let's just jump right into it because, again, I got into the fitness world after I played football. I tore my ACL and it turned out to be the perfect job opportunity for me to be able to work and, rehab my knee and get back out and play and stuff like that. And at that time, I was only 19 years old and I met a ton of trainers, a ton of people like yourself that, look, we got to figure it out. These clients ain't just gonna find themselves. We got to also live it and do it and be breathe it. We can't just be fitness, a couple hours a day. It's got to be 24 hours a day. So I'd love for you to just dive into your story just a little bit about, your come up. I know you spent time as a trainer. You spent a lot of years in the fitness industry. So I'll give you the microphone for a second to kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I became a personal trainer when I was in college, and it was one of those things I was telling myself it was an awesome college job. It worked around my college schedule, and everyone asked if that was going to be my career, and I was like, no, it's just a perfect college job, right?
Right.
But little did I know, like, I started loving it so much, and I switched my business management major to kinesiology, and really just started diving into it. And my original plan was to become a firefighter, and I started going that route, got my EMT cert and everything. And then I was like, wait, I got to stop personal training to work as an EMT. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And so that's where that kind of path died for me. And it really, my journey from being a personal trainer for a corporate gym and,
Right.
then moving to a privately owned gym, was a solid transition because it was an eye opener that not every gym operates the same. And I actually helped build a personal training company or build a personal training department for this, private gym
Right.
and, grew to be the head trainer and the training department manager.
Mhm.
And then after some disagreements with the owner, I was like, you know what? I'm
Yeah.
out. Like I
Yeah.
left,
Yeah.
and now that gym actually no longer has
No,
a
so
personal training
we've
department,
seen that. Yeah, we've seen the same things, right? Yeah.
and then actually that location isn't even there anymore, right?
Right.
Which is even the
Yeah.
crazier part. And so I took that first bet on myself, went independent and started building up a personal training clientele, grew that to six figures. 0% was online. Like I only did it in person.
Oh, okay.
So that was the difference between me and everyone else that was claiming to be personal trainers at the time was like everyone wanted to be a trainer so they could do this online, work
And
from wherever they want. It's like, that's not
just
what I
for
wanted.
context too, I want to make sure we don't brush this over. You were in Cali, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Los
So,
Angeles.
again, that's a huge thing, guys. That's a lot of fitness folks out there. There's a ton of gyms out there. There's a ton of trainers out there. So for him to actually establish a six-figure salary doing that, there's a ton of work that goes into it. So I want to just make sure we're giving that perspective because a lot of people may not realize, hey, we're talking about Los Angeles. This is where the fitness industry lives.
I actually helped some of my clients were actually personal trainers, right? And
A lot of,
that's
yeah, that's what a lot I've heard. A lot of trainers go to trainers because they need to perfect their craft as well.
yeah. So like I helped some trainers get certified, and I helped so like that was my whole thing. Like I never saw it as competition. Like I always wanted to bring other people up, and like where I can help, whether it's someone wanting to lose weight, someone wanting to get in the industry, like by all means. Like I'll tell you how I built my referral business, right? I can give you the blueprint, but you got to do that work, right?
Right.
And that's where a lot of people do, kind of lose off or taper off is right there is actually doing the work.
Yes.
But I built a six-figure personal training business, and I even had clients that were on a waiting list. Basically, they wanted to train with me. If I had a cancellation, I would text my list, and whoever got the spot, right? I train pro athletes to Parkinson's clients, the spectrum of clients. And that led into an opportunity that I helped build a prep school, a private prep school for basketball athletes, as a middle school a school.
Mhm.
And we launched that, but my goal was always to open my own gym. So I had to step away after the first year, and that I helped establish it. And I was like, "You guys got this now. Do your thing."
Right.
And my gym I wanted to open wasn't just another, and this is the issue I see with a lot of gyms, is
Yeah.
a trainer works for a gym. They see that they can do this model too. And
Mhm.
so they basically copy and paste it.
Right. Yeah.
And,
It's easily duplicatable, right?
yeah, and so like that was the issue, was like so many gyms, even some of these big brands, it's the same exact business model with
Mhm.
different paint, on the walls, different logos, but everything is the exact same. If you
Right.
were blindfolded and did the whole workout, you wouldn't know what gym you were in,
Right.
right? And so that's not what I wanted to create. And so in between my training sessions with my clients, some that didn't want to do like the homework and stuff I would give them, they would go to boot camps and stuff around us, and that was basically their homework to stay active in between our sessions.
Right.
And they would come back with similar complaints over the years. The class times don't work out for me. The class times I wanted to are always overbooked, or whatever the case may be. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, man, it's crazy that no one's just solved these like core problems. And
Mhm.
so from that, the birth of Strive 11 was slowly forming, and
Right.
now Strive 11, a few years later after that, was we launched it. It was actually we launched the tail end of COVID, right? For a year, we were running it in a park, testing, trying,
Right. It was just
and
boot camps, like a group workout type thing, right?
yeah. So Strive 11 is a boot camp,
Mhm.
but we don't have class times,
Yeah.
right? So you can come in at the flexibility of your own schedule, just like a big box gym. But
Right.
once you're in the doors, then you get that same energy, same feel as a boot camp. You can do a 30-minute workout, you can do a 75-minute workout. Again, it's all based off of you, your fitness level, your calendar.
Well,
The
that's
other,
a good point, and I want to make sure I don't mean to cut you off, but
you're good.
I went from working at an Orange Theory to a 9 round, and
Hmm.
I remember going to like the 9 round convention, and they're making that point. See, the Orange Theory thing was great, but when you have those class times, it runs into a problem when you're trying to get new people. The 9 round thing, you walk in whatever time it is, and there's a system that a trainer will put you through, and that is the difference. So when you and I remember, when this gym used to be open actually, but the owner would I would ask him, was that the thing that made it so you bought into the franchise? He goes, yeah, those little things, had nothing to do. I mean, obviously you want to help your clients receive their goals and all that, but when you're looking for the right franchise, you got to think what's going to be convenient for the people walking through the door.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, similar to 9 rounds, minus the boxing aspect
Mhm.
is what would be the closest kind of model to us.
Right.
And like for us, you can do 1 round because 9 rounds is like 30-minute workouts, right? For us, you
Mhm.
can do 2 rounds, you could do 1.5, you could do whatever you want in between with the warm up, with the cool down. So it could be a 75-minute workout, right? And then the exercises change every single day depending on the muscle split of the day,
Right.
right? So every muscle split is different. And so the 11 from Strive 11 comes from the 11 stations that we do have.
Got it. Now, did you create this like on your own, or was it something that you were already working on? Like you had 11 stations at the people at the park and all that, and then it just became a brand?
So, I mean, I slowly started creating, like Strive was my personal training company. The
Yeah.
11 part came as I was trying to create what the gym model would be.
Right.
So at the park, it was, 1 round and, or 2 rounds. You could do 2 rounds. So that's an hour right there. But a lot of the other aspects started coming later once we had the gym and we started adapting, from the body composition scans, the heart rate technology, the challenges, and the rewards apps and meal plan apps and all the other stuff that we have. That stuff was later iterations of Strive 11 Fitness. But the testing part was in the park because at the park you have unlimited space.
Right.
And so it's like, if we know we're trying to get 2,000 to 3,000 square feet,
Right.
we kind of boxed off what that would be in the park.
Mhm.
And if it started getting clumped up, like we needed to find a solution before we opened doors, and we're paying rent and everything.
Right.
And so obviously not every problem was fixed before we opened doors. Like it's a whole different ball game
Yeah,
once you're
that's
in the
actually what I
woods.
was going to ask you about because I too, again, I a lot of time in the fitness industry. I made that transition from a corporate gym to a privately owned gym, and sad to say, but there were twice where I was working there and somebody lost their life. Somebody lost their
Wow.
life because they were on the treadmill and they just kind of they fell off. Literally, one I'll never forget. the son was with him, and he watched his father lose a life at the gym, and then there was another one where the guy passed out. And I to this day it bothers me thinking about it every single time because I see me and him caught eyes to the son as he left, and we caught eyes, and I'll never forget that look in his face. But I bring that up only because, when the ambulance came, they said, look, this is twice, and that defibrillator wasn't opened up. And I remember never being trained on that, never being trained on how to do it, never be any of that. And that was the difference between somebody that's running the corporate setting versus some privately owned gym that just goes up and, you kind of just put your money in and just take people's money because it's only $10 a month. And that kind of ruins the industry. And there was a point, I believe, I'm not sure if you heard this stat, but there was a point where we as like gym salespeople were on the same level as car sales folks, where you take somebody's money and all of a sudden the gym never goes up, all that kind of stuff. So as you were deciding to say, hey, look, obviously you've done your research, you know how much square feet you're going to need, but once this building goes up, now it's really on and popping, especially given your location.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that is horrible. And I mean, one of the things with our model too is we do have certified trainers, we do have non-certified trainers, but non-certified have to work with a certified trainer. And
Yeah.
being a certified trainer, you need to have your AED and your CPR and all that kind of stuff. It is a requirement to know where all that stuff is as well.
1,000%. And
You
that's
know,
something a lot of people don't think about because they think, I mean, I'm thinking about the general manager now. It was just like, all right, hire him. We could pay him every 2 weeks and then try to contract out some training company without vetting folks out. Folks,
mhm.
PSA, public announcement. You don't want to sign up to a gym like that. Tell it
Yeah.
right now. You do not want to go to a gym without the person who's like really psychotically, this is my baby and I'm going to make sure shit is legit.
Yep. No, I agree. And like, to even take it to, I mean, I'll shift gears, but to what you're saying, one of the things that we train our trainers on that people don't even understand, and this is why if you're listening right now and you're a trainer and you want to grow your training company, this is listen up to this.
Yes,
It's the perception of the room, not always the perception of the client, right? But you do have to have the perception of both, meaning that if your client is doing an exercise, that even though you might have a relationship or, be cool with the client, where you stand, how you stand, where you are positioned matters, not just to the client, but to the rest of the room.
hmm
Right. And so that's something that even we train our trainers, even on the little things like that. Right. I'll give you a base level one for
Right.
gym setting, right? The hip adductors and abductors machines when your legs are opening and closing.
Right.
I've seen trainers standing where the weight stack is, which is directly in front of the client, whether it's a male or a female, and just staring straight at the client and talking to them. And it's like, even though you're not looking down, do you think that's probably the most appropriate spot for you to stand?
Exactly.
Probably not, right?
Small things,
Yeah.
right? Mhm.
But those things really matter because at the end of the day, that's why I had husbands signing up their wives to come train with me because
Mhm.
it's like those things matter. That's why girls would tell other girls that
Mhm.
I'm not that kind of trainer,
Right.
right? But those things matter as a trainer, and that's something that's minuscule in compared to, knowing how to use an AED or knowing where the AED machine even is,
Exactly. And
right?
it's serious too. I mean, that again, I could probably talk for hours. There's a situation where I worked at an Orange Theory where the person who ran that franchise said, look, if it's genuine, guys, all right, but if I get any word about you guys making these ladies uncomfortable, that's automatic termination. And when you're talking about fitness, their bodies are in positions that they're very vulnerable people. They're mostly, like you said, might have just broken up, or there's a husband that signed up their wife. They want to get better. So if you are doing these things, it is you're attacking someone in a vulnerable space, and that is not right. That is not fair. And again, I've seen it over and over again. I've seen a lot of people lose their businesses, lose clients, lose a lot of things just because they couldn't comprehend, hey, I got to be professional, even though the setting lends itself to, hey, maybe there's some loose conversation here and there, but you as the person that's in the industry, you have got to make sure you're staying professional in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And I actually bring that up because like you mentioned, you're training people at the park, but when it comes to like buying equipment and opening in this place, can you walk us through that process a little bit? Because
Yeah.
something like for a long time, I wanted to open up my own gym, but then you saw the cost of these treadmills, you see the cost of equipment. So I was like, all right, look, man, let me try to sell books and get into public speaking because that is just like crazy. And then when you think about the machines, you still have to have a person that's actually teaching you how to use machines. It's like, why buy it? So, walk us through some of the trials and tribulations of that.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was in the park, I mean, we had some equipment and stuff when we were testing this stuff out, but that whole time I
Mhm.
had my own setup and that I was doing my personal training at. So the park was something that was going in between like what my actual business was at the time. And then launching the gym and buying equipment and stuff like you for our gym though, it's a little different because we don't have treadmills, we don't have any cardio equipment, we don't have squat racks. One, because that's one of the things that I don't agree with a lot of boot camps that they'll have squat racks, they'll have bench presses and stuff. And it's like, how can a trainer manage and spot a client or even watch how a client is spotting another client with a room of 30 or 40 or 50 people? You
Mhm.
can't. That's where injuries happen, right? And so you can't effectively in, a 1 minute span of trying to explain everything to everyone, make sure that everyone understands the protocols of spotting, of, watching for, risks of injury or anything like that. So for our model, like we have the barbells and stuff like that, but it's usually used for like landmine exercises, where it's attached to the ground on one aspect. We have kettlebells, dumbbells. We do have trap bars, that we use for deadlifts because it's more ergonomical, in terms of safety for deadlifts. But all the stuff that we have in terms of equipment is all movable, right? So it's not as a big of a startup capital to use, but it's also something that creates more functional movement patterns for clients, right?
Mhm.
So you could still do all the traditional ones, but you can do it in a way that's comfortable for someone's body type.
Right. So as you're building all this out, one of the things that especially given the amount of people that I've met, that I've seen them struggle with is how to maintain balance. Again, there's been quite a few people on this very show that have you're looking at one myself that have struggled, especially as fitness people. We're known to not necessarily have lives outside of the gym or, constantly be at work. Can you speak on, especially for the younger trainers that are grinding from 5 a.m. all the way to, 6 p.m. How were you able to sort of balance out, whether it's family, whether it's growth, whether it's how are you able to, balance out these things when we know they're never going to just stop thinking about Strive 11, but there got to be that time where you can recharge your battery and say, all right, let's go get this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was that trainer that worked 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was back-to-back clients, like and
Right.
that's and so I still had a girlfriend and still had, who's now my wife and everything. And realizing that that wasn't 7 days a week. Like that was, 4 days a week. Fridays I always finish a little bit earlier.
Mhm.
Saturdays I maybe have a few clients, the more dedicated ones, serious ones, I would do Saturday morning. But then the rest of Saturday I was off. Sunday I didn't work. And that was because I needed to make sure that I gave the other side of my life,
Mhm.
that time of me as well. And when I was with them, I was with them. Right.
Mhm.
And that's the biggest thing. Even now, I, have a gym, I have a franchise, I have so many other parts that are going on as well.
I want to ask you about how you went franchise in a second, but I want to make sure I let you keep cooking on this one because this is actually really important, folks. It really is important to give you that perspective.
Oh, definitely. So like all these things, there's levels to it, and you have to be able to analyze yourself what you really want, right?
Mhm.
And so if you want a family and you want that life, then you need to realize it's just as important as your business. So you can't be building something and losing the other aspect in the process because then you're building it for them and they just want your time.
Right.
So I will say even now, like I have a 3-year-old daughter, and when my time with her is like, when she gets home from preschool, my wife's home from work and everything like that, because my wife still does have a career and she
Right.
loves it. So it's like, more power to her.
Mhm.
But like when they're home, like I'm home with them for, a couple hours and it's like no one can call me or text me. Like the business, if it business burns down for something, that's fine. I'll figure it out tomorrow.
Right.
Right. Or once they go to sleep, if I still need to work, then I work. Right. I set those boundaries around my time with them and realizing that even though you're an entrepreneur and yes it is a 24/7 hour 24/7 gig,
Mhm.
realize that your family is also 24/7, so
Right.
you need to have that balance. And I hate using the word balance because everyone thinks it's 50/50. Like my balance isn't going to be your balance. You need to find what works for you. But
Right.
I will say the biggest thing for family and for having a girlfriend or having a relationship is communication, in letting them know. This is something that I learned honestly not too long ago,
Right.
was as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a trainer, you'll have frustrations and you don't tend to communicate that to your significant other. And they're giving you their voice and they're trying to, get your opinion on stuff or it's just vent to you. But
Right.
we tend to, and maybe it's just a guy thing, but we tend to just hold it all in. right? Because we're like, well, whatever advice they give isn't going to help me, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes it's not the help that really matters. It's the fact that you're willing to give them a little problem and just to get, even if you have the answer, let them give you some opinions because now they feel like they're a piece of the solution and now they feel like they're a piece of the business in that part of your life. Otherwise, it feels like there's two lives to you.
Yes. And you said the key words there when it comes to communications and being very intentional. So you have to have it pre in your own head, pre in your own heart. Want to be married. I want to have a family. I want to do the same way you have it in your business and your training, what you have in your vision. You have to want these things intentionally in order for them to happen. Because if you're not intentional about these things, and I've seen this over and over, if you're not intentional about these things, and then the business is just going to tend to take over every aspect of your life and the balance of it is just not going to be there. And that kind of is the grit perfect lead into the fact that it's a franchise. That was one thing that kind of, took me aback when I was looking at because most people they have their boot camp and then they have their gym and then they're just like, look, this is me. But now you've decided that you were going to go franchise and actually sell the model. So, walk us through what went into that decision, how it's going, and if anybody might be interested in purchasing a franchise, you can kind of put all that stuff out there now as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, my goal, my number one core value personally was always to have a positive impact on as many lives as I can while I can, right?
Mhm.
Because tomorrow's not guaranteed, right? And so, opening up a gym and keeping it corporate and just opening up multiple locations, like I'm transforming my members' lives, yes, but at the same time, like if I can help a person that wants to open up a gym and I can change their life in the process, and then I get to have a ripple effect and almost like a second layer, I get to essentially have an impact on their members' lives indirectly, like that just aids in my core value, right?
Right.
So that was one of the reasons for franchising. That was always one of the goals. But one of my biggest things is I like taking the path least traveled, right? How many trainers, build a six-figure business, right? Not that many. And then from that, how many say they're going to open a gym and actually open it? Even less than the ones that made six
That's
figures,
what I was telling you.
you know?
We were all literally on the level of car salesmen at one point.
Exactly. And it's like then so that's a little bit less. And then how many open a gym and then actually take it and make it a scalable franchise and actually do the thing that they, set out to do.
Right.
That's even smaller pool, right? And so
Yeah.
that was one of those like motivational things just to take that path and show like my circle, my family, my daughter that, anything that you want to achieve in life is a possibility, right? It's not just something you see on social media. Like I want to be the living proof for, the people around me.
Right. All right. And the thing is, too, also I want to make sure we re-emphasize this. It's the road less traveled, folks. The road less traveled. Absolutely nothing significant in your life is going to happen if you don't decide, hey, not a lot of people are doing it. You got to be the first one through the door. You got to, and you're going to get bloody. So just accept it. So, speak on if, like I said, a lot of business owners tune into the show. If they're interested in purchasing a franchise, what are the steps? What are the process? What's the process that you take them through?
Yeah, so I mean, you can go to strive11fitness.com/franchise, but essentially, especially with our foundational franchises, 'cause we just launched it officially last year, and we have a location opening in Tampa. We have some opening up in Texas and Washington as well. So our foundational franchises, once we hit our goal essentially for this year is 10. Once we hit 10, I'm actually putting a pause on it just to make sure everything is stable. The foundational, is set before we open it up for the next set of 15. But there's pause breaks in that. But when you do come on, the main thing is if you don't have that intention of wanting to have an impact, I don't care what your financials are, to be honest. Right. So that's one of our biggest requirements is that you have to align with our core values. And if you don't, it's okay. Like there's plenty of business opportunities out there for you that will make you money.
Right.
But
Now, is this like a general fitness type of a place? Because I know I've worked for franchise like a D1 that they were
mhm.
just catering to athletes, and then they had that, but they needed the people to come to make money. Like, is there a target person that you're looking for in terms of who comes in as Strive 11?
So that's the cool thing is like our model is a broader demographic
Hmm.
than a traditional boot camp because a traditional boot camp, is I mean D1 is a little bit more niched with that athletic side to it, which I mean I think their model is really cool, but the traditional boot camp model it's like 21 to 45 because of the exercise, because of the intensity and so forth. Our model, we have members that come with their parents from the age of 13. We have members as old as 70,
Yeah,
you
because
know?
it's stations, and that was the cool thing I actually learned. Those stations make it, yeah, so you can cater it on the fly as you're going.
Exactly. Yeah. So each of the 11 stations, there's a base level exercise,
Mhm.
for the day for the muscle group. But then each station, it's almost like having a personal trainer without having to pay one because each
I used to
station's
say that
tailored
all
to
the time.
you.
I used to say that I used to say that all the time. Like, you guys are getting blessed. There's this. I know
Yep.
personal trainers that would do this, but they would charge well over $200 an hour
Yep.
because it's that same concept, and that's what the fitness industry is all about. So I do want to be very respectful of your time, man. I definitely appreciate you coming. I'm looking forward to staying in touch and things like that. How can people get in touch with you if they want to hear more? Where do you normally send them?
I mean, you can go to my website. I just kind of created a landing hub for all my social medias. And,
Mhm.
I even wrote a book, Money Muscle Mindset, for anyone that is looking to become a gym owner. It's basically just the book that I wish I would have had,
Yeah.
to look at all the different aspects from, how to find a location and all that kind of stuff. But all that's on my website, devangonzalez.com.
Great. And that will be included in the show notes as well. So, Devin, the final thing I do to close out all the shows that I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are back to college years. You're thinking that, hey, I'm training, but it's just a kind of a part-time gig. You're considering doing the EMT stuff. I want you to pretend that that version of Devin is here with us in the Zoom room. Just give him some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Just keep your head down and just keep trusting the process. At the end of the day, it will work. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
Okay, it's here, guys, and the mic is officially dropping just like that. All right, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.